Hey guys, Matthew here. So this is going to be basically the review of a league start as well as my first impressions of the Blight League. I'll be going over basically how we achieved the short-term goal of our team. The team was supposed to be 6 members initially. It kind of is more like 4.5. At least it was up to not so long ago. Now we can say we have a full-fledged 5 members of the team, so it feels good, man. So the short-term goal was to grab ourselves a Headhunter as fast as possible. As you can see, we're technically the 10th of September, but the reality is that the Headhunter was actually acquired 56 hours into the league. So it might seem fast to a lot of you guys, I understand, but in reality, it was excessively slow. Uh, way slower than I would have imagined it. And there's a lot of good reasons for that, and that's another thing I want to talk about in this video is basically what went wrong, what could have been better, what was supposed to be the plan, and what actually happened in terms of execution. But first off, let's go over how we did it. Essentially, 4.5 of us were mapping, and the reason why I say 4.5 of us is because we had a support that was essentially very useless for a long time. I can safely say that at this point he's a full-fledged member of the group, and he's actually very useful, and he's even essential. But for a while, it took quite a bit of time for him to get on, online. Uh, and it's not really his fault. It's just the build he was playing is a very end game oriented build, and when you don't have the end game oriented items, then you fall flat on your face. So there's that. But the other reason why I'm saying basically 4.5 is because we had 4 parties of people mapping, because there was like 3 of us mapping solo, and then 1 person, Tuna, with his support mapping together. And the 0.5 is essentially because you get 50% more loot in the map whenever somebody's with you. So essentially, we were getting 4.5 times 4.5 members worth of loot, not 5 members, even if we had 5 people. So if you've watched the old video or you've been listening to me talk in stream, or like talk to people on their streams and stuff like that had to do with the group, we were supposed to be initially 6 people. Our boss killer actually dropped out when we reached around the end of Act 4 because he was severely behind the group, and decided that he just didn't want to deal with the stress. It was too stressful, so he was just gonna dip and go do his own thing solo, level up solo, and whatever. We weren't too sure if he was gonna join up with us later, but in the end, he actually ended up joining another group. So hopefully things went well for him. But in terms of our group, he wasn't really part of anything. Um, didn't get too far with us. So that's basically what happened. So at that point, we didn't have a boss killer anymore. So I took the boss killer role, hoping that I could be the trader and then boss kill, um, basically in between my trading. Whenever the members got to bosses that they couldn't handle on their own, I'd just come in, kill the boss, and that was my idea behind it. But as I'll keep going in this video, you'll see that that's not exactly what happened at all. Um, so we got to maps in 6 hours with normal and cruel lab done, which isn't particularly horrible, but it's not at all fast. Not something I could say like, oh yeah, we did well. We were super scuffed. Then again, we did finish Act 1 in something like 40 minutes or so, because we were just dealing with crashes and consistently going back to the queue. The little blue swirling, being able to teleport to people without going back to town and using a portal scroll, is a really nice addition, but I don't know why it just kept crashing. Literally all of us except Floco, so that was awful. We lost a lot of time going back into queues of like 20k people to get back in, to just get crashed, to see that one other person in the group had just crashed. So it didn't feel all that great, honestly. It didn't feel good at all, but that's okay. 6 hours was all right, I guess. I'm not sure how the other groups that got to maps within like 4 hours were able to all get to there in like 4 hours and not deal with any crashes early and all that stuff. But for us, it was super scuffed. But that's okay. Anyways, um, the thing is, when we got to maps in about 6 hours, like I said, only about two of us were actually capable of doing maps. Me being on a build I had never played before, on a archetype that I have never played before, which is the miner. Uh, I was actually able to do maps better than like four of the other people. The only person that was also capable of doing maps pretty much and start pushing the Atlas was Floco. Um our our Delver Tuna and his support kind of respect way too early. Tuna respect the lightning arrow slash tornado shot from Toxic Rain at like level 50 or 60, and that simply doesn't work at all. He was struggling so damn much to even get out of like Chamber of Innocence. Just couldn't kill anything, did zero damage, tried like three different bows, like uniques, to see if anything would work, and nothing did, so he just was on a huge struggle bus until we were able to get him some upgrades. And then it started getting a little bit better. They still spent something like over an hour and a half or something in Blood Aqueducts trying to get to where they'd be capable of farming maps, especially the support was extremely behind when we got to maps. So that was super scuffed. So at that point, we didn't have a lab runner anymore because our lab runner had decided that he wasn't going to play. So Bolern was supposed to be the lab runner, but then Bolern decided that, uh, he had never done lab running before, so he was just going to Atlas push. So we didn't have a lab runner either until Floco converted his mapper to lab running, and he did that for about a day. Made a few exalts, like quite a few exalts and stuff from selling enchants and just drops in general. So that was nice. And then he respected a speed mapper to be able to do what was supposed to be his initial job, which was to farm basically the syndicate. His entire job was just to farm syndicate low tier maps with some speed gear, item rarity gear to enable me to do like a ton of chaos recipe. And I mean that worked very well while he had the iron rarity gear, but then when he converted to lab running, at that point we had decided to stop the chaos recipe because it wasn't worth it anymore. Exalts were getting too expensive, which means over 70 C per exalt. So we decided to just completely stop that. So that's when he converted to lab running, when we no longer needed like all that jewelry, essentially. And then he remade another character that was going to be a speed map farmer for a syndicate, and also that's because that's what he enjoys. So at that point, right now, we still don't have a lab runner either, but that's okay. We're going to manage without. Lab running is a little bit weird this league because of all these enchants and all this meta that's super weird and that doesn't benefit all that much from lab enchants. And there's also a lot of people farming labs. I don't know if my video or whatever has anything to do with that, but there's a lot of people farming labs. So enchants are very cheap. Without TS2 being like the supreme enchant that everybody's chasing to sell for like 30x on Devotos and stuff like that, it just kind of scuffs up the entire thing. But that's okay. Like we decided we'd deal with it, and we just won't have a lab runner for the time being, and probably for the rest of the league, to be honest, but that's alright, because at this point Tuna's being able to delve, which is another thing that really screwed us over, is that GGG broke delving. Like 4 different nodes in delves were just not spawning the mods, so you couldn't complete the actual node, so you couldn't progress. If you've seen the clip of like Zizrin really getting pissed over that, because it makes sense. Like you want to do something and you just can't do it because the game is actually broken. A patch happened about 30 minutes ago to fix that. Hopefully it does fix it. But at this point, they still decided to delve despite the fact that it was broken by going around and wasting a shit ton of sulfite. But they just had to do what they had to do to get to where they wanted to be, which is item level 83 zones to start really popping out maps from delving. The only problem is it took so long because of the fact that delve was broken and they had to go around all these nodes, that it was basically maps are at the point where they're basically, I wouldn't say worthless, but very close to worthless. So like selling maps is just not out of question, but not exactly amazing either. But we'll make the best out of it. Obviously, once he starts feeding me, you know, fossils, I'll be able to start crafting it really, and stuff like that. So essentially, if you've been following since the start, we have no delver. We had basically no delver because delver's broken. No lab runner for the most part because our lab runner decided not to play path and keep playing classic WoW. So that's all good. That's fine as well. Completely understandable. The league did seem pretty questionable, and he was having a great time with classic WoW. So that's awesome for him. Hopefully that works out as well. Their support took forever to come online. He actually ended up eating more than anybody else's member in terms of currency. We were just bleeding currency because he was so weak and he was such dead weight that we just had to pour currency into him to make him useful. I dropped like a 7x Watcher's Eye and we had to put it on him because selling in was out of question. I dropped like 2-socket Tomb Fists and we put those on Tuna because it was just going to help him that much more instead of selling them for like 3-4 exalts or whatever. So there's just a lot of things that went wrong. But in the end, at this point right now, if I had to like do it all over again, I would obviously. Hopefully it would go better, but I'm not trying to like shit on all these members of my group and stuff. They did what they could, and they did the best that they could with the knowledge and the what they had available to them. Because I was very very stingy with currency. Because I wanted to buy Headhunter as fast as possible, so every time we had enough currency to convert into Chaos, convert into Exalts, to then buy a Doctor card, I would do it. And we were barely ever upgrading anything on our gear, so it was a real struggle. So that's something I definitely learned that, if you want to push and have a group push and stuff like that, definitely take a few times, sometimes just a few chaos here and there for some upgrades, especially on like jewelry and stuff and belts and whatnot. It goes a really long way to make it so your mappers actually survive their maps instead of like ripping 6 times on bosses. And not only never being able to level up, but also just simply taking forever to complete maps instead of being able to push as fast as possible. So that was a mistake on my part for sure. But obviously, going with endgame super expensive builds, early is also a mistake on their part. But like I said, there's nothing wrong with it, and I do not want you guys to think of me basically talking shit about them. Or calling them bad or anything or slow or whatever, because they did what they could and they did the best they could. We all did the best we could, and 56 hours to get Headhunter is by no means good or fast for a group of like 6 people. Well, 5 people actually, but it's still like kind of fast compared to like a solo player or even compared to certain other groups out there. Because the reality is. We didn't just have the Headhunter. Actually, when we got the Headhunter, we did the countdown, and the net worth of our team was about 110 exalts. So I took out a calculator here, and essentially we had a net worth of 110 exalts in 56 hours divided by 4.5 players, basically, because support only adds 50% more loot to the map to the drops. Totaling about 0.43 exalt per hour per member, from the league start beginning to the 50-hour mark or 56-hour mark when we got the Headhunter. So it's not like awful, but it's not fast. Like you're not even talking about an exalt per hour per member. Like it's really not that great. Obviously though, we didn't just play for 56 hours straight. Everybody slept at the very least 5 hours per day for the 2 first days. I'm the only person who just stayed awake for the entire 2 first days. I only had a nap of 4 hours for the entire thing because I saw that Headhunter prices and Doctor prices were really like skyrocketing. So I wanted to push as fast as I could to be able to get it for the team. It was probably a bad decision in the end, because around the end of those hours, I was so tired that I was essentially very, very inefficient with my time. Getting a little bit of sleep and coming back definitely helped me out in terms of efficiency. Okay, so let's get into how we did it basically. Uh, we all mapped. The reality of it is the party was so scuffed and the roles were so scuffed, and our supposed to be lab runner had never done lab running, and he was playing a toxic rain build, and he didn't know how to convert to like a GC trapper for his speed build, and he just decided that it would probably be better for him to Atlas push, and that was fine. So then Floco took that role, uh, but that was like on the second day or past the second day or so, and he only did that for like a day before re-rolling into his syndicate farmer. So everything was excessively scuffed. Honestly, it was really, really bad. Obviously, that's why it took so long. Because realistically, you could do this about 10 to 20 hours faster with the same amount of people. Especially if they didn't brick delve, that hurt us quite a bit. Anyways, so here's the notable drops that we got. Essentially, I got a shaped bow that I dropped. I identified it, and it was worth 3 exalts. It had like attack speed, double damages, something else. I dropped 4 exalts pure. Floco dropped an axe. Tuna, mage, which is his support, and Bowlern dropped no exalts. That had dropped no exalts at that point. At this point, they have, except for Bowlern. He's slacking off, just not getting any exalts, boys. Anyways, we got a 3x enchant in lab, which was Cobra Lash, the new skill. We got a Void Fletcher for 2.5x from Uber Elder. A Tinker Skin that was super well rolled that we sold for an X. I think it was also 5 linked. And that totaled about 14.5x. In div cards, just random ass div cards, we got about 5x. In maps, we sold about 5x worth of maps. I basically sat there for 30 minutes with all the maps that anybody in the group was not gonna run anymore. So all our early red maps and yellow maps, and even some white maps, and sold them for in between 3 alchemy each and 8 chaos or so. And that was basically a few hours before we got the Headhunter to afford like the before last card. So that was about 5x, totaling like 10x there. Then we got a bunch of uniques and stuff. Those are like the more valuable things that we dropped. A lot of this are things that I personally dropped, and I tried to ask the members what they dropped that they could remember, but most of us were so sleep deprived and whatnot that we completely just don't remember. But these are the things that the group could remember. Most of it is from me, but there's definitely a few things in there that are from other people in the group. So that totaled to about 9.5x. And so if you do the math, the grand total from drops and whatnot was 34 exalts. Chaos recipe, we did about 15 exalts worth of chaos recipe at the average of about 55 chaos per X is what we paid for. That being said, that's not exactly true because the thing is, chaos recipe is static, right? You get 2 chaos for every unidentified recipe. If you're doing it when exalts are 40C each, you're getting 20 chaos recipe. You're getting an exalt. When you're doing it when it's 70C, it's 35 recipes per. So it takes twice as much time, twice as long. So obviously in the early stages, we were making way more exalts per hour than in the latter stages when chaos were like, or when exalts were like 70 chaos. Obviously, it's simple because it doesn't progress. The chaos recipe only stays flat. It's 2 chaos per recipe, and the only limiting factor is how many you can do. So we did as many as we could, with especially jewelry being the bottleneck as always. And once exalts reached 70C, we called out on it, sold all the rares that we had laying in stash, and moved forward. So obviously, as I wrote here, more exalts from Chaos Recipe early day 1, and then more exalts from items afterwards. And from 70 to from 40 to 75 C, so an average about 55 chaos per X. So the Headhunter price was 44 exalts that I paid for, well, that we paid for essentially. I did the math. We got like 2 cards for 5x, 2 card for 6x, I think 2 card for 6.5, and like 1 card for 7.5 maybe, and 1 card for 8x or something like that. It was like 44 exalts for the Headhunter is what we paid. At the time of buying it, if we were to take the Headhunter back and resell all those 8 cards, they were 8x each. They actually went down, which is kind of weird, but they were 8x each, so we could have made 64x by selling them. At that point, the group's net worth, so every character in the group was worth at the very least 110x, and we were talking about that, and it was between basically 110 and 130 exalts that the group was worth when we actually got the Headhunter. And that was with the 64 exalts that the cards would have been worth at that time, not with the 44 that we paid for or anything else like that. And that includes literally everything that every single member of the group had, because yes, we pushed for Headhunter, but there's a lot of drops that are not in there, like for example a Watcher's Eye that are dropped for 7 exalts that we didn't sell, or like investing into a Soul Ripper flask for the support, or like the 2 socket Tomb Fists that I dropped that I put on our Delver, stuff like that we could have sold for a good bit of money, but we didn't because well, those items were actually needed in the future, so instead of selling them and rebuying them, we decided to just keep them. So yeah, the group's net worth was like 110x, which, as I did the math previously, amounts to 0.44, let's just say 0.4 exalts per hour per member of the group from the start of the league to 56 hours into the league. Now, if you ask me how I would optimize this way better next time, obviously we would need GGG to not have Delve be broken. That would be the most important thing, so our Delvers can actually start delving as soon as they hit red maps, essentially. Because from there on we can just give them the completion and feed them the sulfite and whatnot, but for that they gotta be able to go down in a straight line to lose and waste as least sulfite as they possibly can. But since that wasn't the case, obviously it was a lot harder and a lot more difficult to get it done. Now, in terms of strategy, I learned a lot this league, and if you want to know my opinion, this is what I'll basically be ending this video with, following by a little bit about the Blight League mechanic and whatnot. My opinion is that Chaos Recipe is absolutely insane. I've said this in the last video and whatnot, but I actually did some proper math this league, because I had some numbers backing it up with people feeding me rares and stuff. And if you took 4 experienced mappers, put them on like something like Toxic Rain or Orbostorm Elementalist or whatever, something that you can basically be able to run some like early white maps like T3, T4 at the speed of light with like a Queen of the Forest or something, and then just a bunch of rarity gear. Anything that gives you more rarity, not quantity. Well, you could go quantity as well, but mostly anything that gives you rarity gear. Which, by the way, is dirt cheap. Like, for example, Orsay's gloves or something, and like, I don't know, and various rings, stuff like that, that just give you a bunch of rarity. Even if it scuffs up your resistances or life or whatever. So since you're running such low tier maps and like Toxic Rain scales with essentially nothing but gem levels, or like Orbostorm's Elementalist because it's just so broken, stuff like that. You could actually, with 4 experienced mappers and 1 person doing Chaos Recipe, and basically for all the 4 other people, which means whenever somebody finishes a map, you'd go into their hideout, and instead of them dumping the items in a dump tab, they'd all give them to you, and you would sort them out, right? So then they would never have to worry about buying supplies to run their maps, such as alchemies, chisels, etc., Valorbs, for example, whatever. And they would never have to even think about any of that. They could just run more maps, since they wouldn't even be dumping their items into tabs to sort them later. They'd be dumping to you every single map, and you would sort them out. Using something like my Chaos Recipe dump tab or quad tab is very, very helpful for this. If you had to deal with that many rare items, but not even necessary either. So I did the math, and you could be making 10 exalts per hour in a group of 5 people with 4 mappers and 1 person, micromanaging the Chaos Recipe. So 10 exalts per hour is when exalts are around the 40 C mark. So as it gets higher, obviously it becomes lower. But the thing is, that would be only from Chaos Recipe. So even if you're doing 10x per hour at 40x or 40 C per, so at 70 C per, you're maybe getting like 4x per hour, right? In terms of just Chaos Recipe, they would still be getting all these rares, or sorry, all these uniques and whatnot that you could also sell to make a bunch of money. And the reality is, if you're able to get 10x per hour that early into the league, you could invest so much into things that other people just can't afford yet. So, example, doctor cards are like 4 or 5 exalts each, that you know you'll be able to sell for like 7 or 8 in like a day. Or inspired learnings, buying them for 4 exalts, selling them for 8 exalts after a few days, or div cards, or anything you want really. If you're getting 10x every hour, you map for like 6 hours, or not even. You map for like 10 hours, right? By the time you start mapping, exalts are like 40C. You stop mapping after 10 hours straight with 4 super efficient people. At that point, exalts have probably reached around the 70C mark, because yeah, in about 10-12 hours, that's basically what it jumps from like 40 to 70. But you've already made in like 10 hours at least 60-70x from Chaos Recipe, and who knows how much from just selling rares and dropping div cards and all that stuff. And what you could do is, you have these 4 people, pushing, or not pushing the atlas, but only just mapping, like low tier mapping, whatever it is, or even pushing the atlas. It doesn't matter, so long as they're basically alkin going their maps and just running one map after another. And then you have one person, a 6th member, who just pushes the atlas, and you feed him all the maps necessary. So, Orb of Horizons, so he can reroll his maps into the ones he's missing if he's trying to, push as fast as possible. All that stuff. You basically feed him all the supplies, the chisels, the Aulks, the Vals, the Sextants even, whatever it is, so he can just push to Shaper as fast as possible to get his Elder Orb. And then he Elders a map within, I don't know, maybe 19 hours, maybe even less, if he's getting fed that much and the API isn't complete shit. You could be looking at Shaper within like 16 hours, and then at that point he can just Elder a map and just start running it full juice, and selling like T16s for like half an exalt each or something, because they'd be worth so much in the first day of the league, like half an X easily, because people want to get their Elder Orb, so they just have to pay whatever price it is. So these results, and that's the reason I'm saying that, we basically made over 100x in 56 hours. But the thing is that same 110 exalts could have been made within 18 to 24 hours if we did it properly, if we had the group set up properly. The thing is, all these people doing all this low tier mapping, you're not going to have really any atlas progression, any atlas completion. So you want to be asking people who are going to be doing things that don't require necessarily atlas completion to be doing, such as, for example, a delver and a support would be perfect for that. As somebody who's going to be lab running later in the league would also be perfect for that. Stuff like that. Basically, people who don't really care about the atlas percent completion bonus. So then they can just chain maps and give you as many rares as possible. So that's basically my strat for the next league. For spoiler alert. Because what's really nice about this, and the person doing all these chaos recipe micromanaging, is also being fed so much currency from the chaos, but also from everything else, essentially, because those people are also dropping other currencies. Obviously, they're dropping exalts, they're dropping chisels, they're dropping sack frags as they're valuing their maps, they're dropping everything else, that you're getting such an influx of so many types of currencies and stuff that you can just start currency flipping day one before all the bots and shit have all the currency they need. And essentially, it's so profitable to flip currency like day one, day two, before the bots get to the market, that you can almost guarantee double your currency. So if you've made 100x in 24 hours of the league, but in just currency from your group and stuff, if you're also flipping div cards, flipping currency, sniping items, and being as efficient as possible, you can easily double that. And at that point, we're talking 200 exalts in a day or so. You know, cut between 6 people, which would be a whopping 30 exalts each, which is, you know, a mirror each. Essentially, they would have made a mirror each, actually a mirror and a half even each, within the first day of a league. Mirrors being about like 20-25x. Very rare that people will sell them for that much. They'll just wait until they're worth more, but technically it would be possible. And the thing is, with that much currency, while it might not seem like that much, you know, 30x, no big deal, right? It's only like a mirror. The thing is, you can take these exalts and start investing into things that you know will double or triple in price within the following days, while the price of mirrors will not go from, say, 20x to, you know, 80x or 100x within the first week. You know, typically they wouldn't. There's some leagues that they do, but normally they wouldn't be anywhere near like 100x. They'd probably be around 60, 70. So if you're tripling that 30x that you made on the first day, and every single member does that, turns that into 100 exalts, buys like 3 mirrors, or, you know, it's just insane amounts of currency. And I know this is all speculation, and there's no like rock hard facts to prove it. And anybody with these kind of results, but trust me when I tell you that it's doable. It's not easy. As I said, we're talking about 4 people sitting on their ass mapping for 10 hours straight, picking up rares with rarity gear as fast as possible, and you micromanaging all that while also doing, you know, buying and flipping currency, buying div cards, buying uniques, stuff like that. Literally as efficient as possible. But if you were to actually push and be that efficient, you could have these kind of results. And if you don't believe me, well, there is this player in this league called LSR, and LSR basically he does this every league. He kind of pushes for the first week or so with 2 traders, and then has enough currency to live for the rest of the league, even if he had no new income of currency. And the second day of the league, when we bought our Headhunter, he spammed well, he didn't spam, but he posted in his little topic thing in game, buying 3 mirrors, 35x each or something. So safe to assume he already had at least 105x, and that's 1 person pushing and 2 traders. Because I know for a fact that his traders don't play the game; they just flip and they just sell items for him and whatnot. So that means alone by himself, just pushing and feeding his traders maps and items and stuff, they had made 100x in essentially 2 days, but with only 1 pusher, not 4 people farming farming currency and farming chaos recipe and 1 trader, 2 traders and only 1 pusher. So I know for a fact these results are possible. It's just that they're not exactly fun, but you could do it if you wanted it hard enough. So this video has been going on for a very long time, so I'll end it up with a quick note, basically, on my first impression with the Blight mechanic in the league. I think it has potential to be a good league if they tune it a little bit more. It feels right now like the rewards are just so abysmal. It's just so small. Like, you're doing the league mechanic in T16 juiced up maps, and you'd be lucky to come out with a couple chaos. Maybe 3-4 chaos on average. And I'm not talking pure chaos. I'm talking with everything that drops, because it's just so shit all the time. And that's really a shame, honestly, because we could have had something like Legion 2.0. I think so, anyways. The blighted maps also are sometimes impossible to do. If 2 of the same unique monsters, I can't remember which one it is, like their names, but there's unique monsters that spawn, and if 2 of them spawn together, one next to another, they're essentially unkillable. I think it's because they have like allies cannot die or something. So if two of them spawn next to each other, you can't kill them. So they just walk up to your pump and they smack it, and it's dead. So that's something that's stupid, like not being able to even complete it. Then there's also all the issues with crashing. There's so much crashing going on. If it's not exception errors being thrown around, it's just the blight maps like literally crashing your entire, not just your game, but sometimes even as far as your entire PC. If you've seen like ZiggyD's video about it, it's pretty damn troll. When a mechanic in a game, in a video game, crashes your entire PC and your stream. So not great. But if they fix these things, these issues, and especially Delve being broken, but now it should be fine. But if they, I think, up the rewards by maybe 10-15%, we could be looking at a pretty damn fun league in reality, because it is pretty unique, and the tower defense doesn't feel too clunky at all. Doesn't feel overpowered, doesn't feel underpowered. You can still walk all over it with a Headhunter. You know, spoiler alert, Headhunters are still OP. And once you have yours, it's essentially like 5-way Legion mechanic. You just get a Headhunter, you just walk all over it. Never have to worry about it again. You don't even need to touch the towers, and you probably shouldn't touch the towers because that thing makes it really, really laggy in Blighted maps. Like your game is almost unplayable with how laggy it is. Because of the amount of calculations going on, the amount of stuff on your screen, and especially the towers. I feel like it's the towers that make it lag like so damn bad. There's just towers everywhere. So that's basically my opinion on the league. I think it does have potential though, and the anointment feature is pretty neat. So that's essentially all I have to say about it. Our league start, how we did it, what went wrong, what could have been better. If you want to, set up your group for next league, I think going hard on Chaos Recipe, even if it doesn't feel fun, is by far the best way to make currency. A lot of the big groups, say like MP's group or Tai group, would tell you to just push the Atlas right. I simply don't think so. I think doing something like the Chaos Recipe and being as efficient as possible with it will yield better results. And I say that because I've seen how incredibly insane it is, this league, without even being optimized for it. Like I didn't even do my specific Chaos Recipe tab because I was expecting to be a trader. I wasn't expecting to have to map, so I didn't take the time to set that up because I just wanted to be able to map. Because we needed somebody to push Atlas and kill bosses, since everybody was playing mapper builds and nobody had single target damage. So yeah, also not being able to access the crafts early to offer a crafting service and be able to craft things myself was also super bad in terms of allowing me to make some juicy currency from those kind of services. But it is what it is. Honestly, we still reach our short-term goal. Now, the long-term goal, we actually don't really have one. We're just going to go with it and see how things go and see how much currency we can manage to make and just have fun with it. But for everybody else out there, I hope you had a great time with Blight. Your league start, I hope it went better than ours. I also hope you keep having a blast with it. And, don't spit on it too quickly. It's not as bad as some people might make it seem like. There are some issues with it, but it does have a lot of potential. So to end off with the video, I want to say a huge thank you to my Patreon subscribers, viewers, all of you guys who support me through my 40-minute long essay videos, honestly. So Jose, Alex, the other Alex, Dante, ZzMastermind, Drool, Goro, Val. You guys are all friggin' amazing, and you basically made this possible. And big shout out to you guys, because the stream that will be coming up shortly is essentially all because of you guys. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions or whatever, if I wasn't clear about anything, let me know in the comments. If you've made it that far, big ayaya in chat. Because this is an extremely long video. But otherwise, that's going to be Matthew signing out, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.